Created as soldiers for a war that spelled the end of an age, Warforged are artificial beings that display a humanoid level of intelligence and self-awareness. This Warforged sentience developed as a side effect of their creator's desire to have fully functional, adaptive battlefield units. When peace finally came, the nations of Corvair agreed to free the Warforged, granting them their first opportunity to make their own choices. Although tireless creations, the Warforged had long ago become tired of war, and chose to live among the other races. Unlike other veterans of the last war, however, the Warforged had never known peace, and had no homes to return to. With no great war to fight, no ancient legacy to claim, and only the vestiges of a culture developed within the past century, Warforged are an emergent people, living uneasily among the other races of the world, seeking to create a place for themselves in unwelcoming lands. To the peoples of Eberron, the Warforged remain as constant reminders of that terrible time. To look upon one is to see an instrument of destruction, a heartless killing machine, a siege engine in the shape of a man. Despite the purposes for which House Cannith built them, Warforged can choose to be peaceful. When given thinking minds, Warforged were granted the ability to surpass the limited uses for which their creators had designed them. But what does this mean? Where does the sentience of a Warforged come from? Do they have souls? And now that they are free and able to explore their full potential, what will they do? I am Omar Timsaw.
I am William Stark.
And this is D&D Legends and Lore. The city awaits. It calls. It cries out to the night in desperation. For the scourge has left its streets desolated, the huddled masses cowering in fear as beasts stalk the night. I am a hunter, and a hunter must hunt. With gunpowder and steel I ply my trade. The night brims with the defiled, the smell of blood fills the air, and there are worse things than beasts that walk these streets. Come. The moon rides high over the black spires, for it will be a long hunt tonight.
You too can join the hunt and fight nightmarish monsters, wield brutal trick weapons, and survive creeping madness in a Soulsborne-inspired world of eldritch horror, before the scourge consumes everything in Steinhardt's Guide to the Eldritch Hunt. Steinhardt's Guide fuses Soulsborne inspiration with Lovecraftian horror to create a monstrous D&D setting book to unleash on your table, including an all-new madness system with over 300 plus effects, a unique lunar phase mechanic comprising 12 environment-altering moons, 12 twisted species options, 16 nightmarish subclasses, 40 fully illustrated trick weapons and expanded firearm options, a new school of magic called osteomancy, which allows you to wield the power of bones to impale, kill, and trap your foes, and 50 plus fearsome foes. And with D&D Beyond integration coming this June 30th, you can integrate the terror of the hunt into your game however you play. Just follow the link in the description to get your copy of Steinhardt's Guide to the Eldritch Hunt now. Will you survive the nightmare?
Warforged are bulky humanoids covered in plates of metal and stone. These armored plates form a protective outer shell and reinforced joints. The skeleton of these materials supports woody fiber bundles that comprise their muscular system. Warforged bodies have an internal network of tubes filled with a blood-like fluid that nourishes and lubricates their systems. Their powerful arms end in hands that each have 2 fingers and 1 thumb, and each of their feet has 2 broad toes. Warforged heads have simple human-like features. They have heavy brows, hinged, toothless jaws, and no noses. The eyes of a Warforged sometimes glow when he or she experiences certain intense emotions. The forehead of each Warforged bears a unique rune called a Gulra. These Gulra help give Warforged a sense of individuality. Beyond these common elements of design, the precise materials and build of a Warforged vary based on the purpose for which it was designed. A Juggernaut warrior is a massive brute with a heavy steel frame, while a skirmisher can be crafted from wood and light mithril to grant it lithe and elegant movement. Most Warforged possess an artificial and relatively genderless shape. They don't reproduce like biological humanoids. A Warforged can modify its body, adding and removing parts as necessary without pain. A Warforged feels pain only from real injury. These physical modifications allow Warforged to vary in appearance as much as any other humanoids. While it is possible for them to change their armor, very few Warforged actually ever do this. The process is similar to a human peeling off their skin. While it's not dangerous for the Warforged, it's a disturbing and uncomfortable experience. Just as a Warforged can bond to armor or weapons, it's possible to attach a tool to its body, such as an arm blade or crafting tool. While they're formed from stone and steel, Warforged are living humanoids. Resting and healing magic provide the same benefits to Warforged that they do to other humanoids. For hundreds of years, the continent of Corvair was united under the kingdom of Galifar. This peace came to an end with the death of King Jarrett in 894 YK, just over a century ago. Conflict over the succession spiraled into outright war between the 5 nations. This war came to be known as the Last War. The Warforged were built to fight in the Last War. The first Warforged were mindless automatons, but House Cannith devoted vast resources to improving these steel soldiers. An unexpected breakthrough produced fully sentient soldiers, blending organic and inorganic materials. Though these new Warforged were made from wood and metal, they could feel pain and emotion. As Cannith refined its techniques, what started as simple infantry gave way to more sophisticated designs. Lithe scouts with mithril plating, powerful juggernauts, even living wands wielding the power of sorcerers. As people grew more accustomed to these living constructs, Cannith began designing civilian Warforged with a wide array of talents. The Last War was a bitter struggle that forever changed the shape of Corvair. It was a century marked by shifting alliances, with years of stalemate interspersed with periods of intense battle. This grueling conflict left deep scars on the land and the people, but there was worse to come. On 20 Ularune 994 YK, the nation of Sire was consumed in a magical cataclysm now known as the Mourning. The cause of the Mourning remains unknown. Many fear it was caused by unbridled use of war magic. Shock and fear brought the nations to the negotiating table, and the last war came to an end in 996 YK with the Treaty of Thronehold. Although many celebrated the end of the war, others remained unsatisfied with its outcome. No one won the war. Even though people optimistically refer to it as the Last War, most believe that it's only a matter of time until conflict begins anew. The mystery of the Mourning is the only thing holding the warmongers at bay. If someone uncovers the secret of the Mourning, if it can be proven that the Mourning can't happen again, or if its power could be harnessed as a weapon, war could erupt again. Until then, the nations remain in a cold war as each makes preparations and seeks advantages in a conflict that could lie ahead. When the last war ended and the Treaty of Thronehold declared the Warforged to be free beings, Warforged lost the structure of their existence. Suddenly, thousands of Warforged were left bereft of leadership or purpose. This bewildering freedom led to a profusion of lifestyle choices. In Thrain and Karnath, most Warforged became indentured servants, tireless workers who could rebuild the lands ruined by war. In other lands, many Warforged stood on the mustering fields for days or weeks, waiting for orders that would never come. Some Warforged then banded together to decide what to do, while others looked to one of their own for a leader. Still others immediately set out in search of a life free of war. The technology used to create Warforged began with the methods used to create mindless constructs. Although true sentience was, in some cases, a goal, there was little thought given to what the effects of sentience would be, or how best to prepare those minds for their new existence. At the moment of their first awakening to the living world, a Warforged can understand the language of its creator and instinctively knows how to move its body. but in all other respects, the newly created Warforged is a blank slate. At this early stage, any creature has great power to mold the future psychology of a Warforged. It has no knowledge of the world, no understanding of falsehood, and no feelings about good or evil. Lies told to it then might be considered truth forever, or at least until disproved. The consciousness of a Warforged is its greatest mystery. Cannith gave them direction, but they didn't actually design their minds. If they could have, they'd have likely made Warforged without emotion, and likely without the capacity for true independence. Many arcane scholars theorize that the creation forges don't create the Warforged mind, but rather summon it. Some believe that the Warforged soul is drawn from the planes, that a Warforged soldier is infused with the essence of Shavarath, the plane of war. Others suggest that the creation forges could be recycling husks from Dolar, the realm of the dead. Perhaps the reason Warforged sometimes feel like they're remembering new skills is because they possessed those skills in a former life. Warforged have a straightforward emotional range. Although they experience pain, fear, hatred, and anger like other races, they tend to be reserved and pensive, hiding emotions behind expressionless metal faces. Some Warforged lack introspection and are dangerously naive or emotionally stunted. Many Warforged are the opposite, though. They question the purpose of their existence and consider whether or not they have souls. A few Warforged develop sophisticated philosophies about what they perceive and learn. Many Warforged fall in with humanoids of similar mindsets. Warforged typically form strong emotional attachments to small groups of comrades. A Warforged often has limited experiences in the world, having spent its existence assigned to one specific duty. They enjoy working, and many create endless lists of goals and chores. They take pride in their jobs, and they dislike idleness and failure more than most. Their sensibilities give them a single-minded efficiency with any task, but particularly in combat. War and military conditioning color Warforged behavior. Warforged intuitively understand duty, conflict, the chain of command, and other elements of war and soldierly life. For most of their existence, Warforged had this clearly defined function, and were encouraged to focus purely on that role. The Treaty of Thronehold gave them freedom, but many Warforged struggle both to find a place in the post-war world and to relate to the creatures that created them. Many Warforged seek out and embrace a concrete purpose, protecting allies, completing a contract or other pursuits, and devote themselves to this task as they once did to war. However, there are Warforged who delight in exploring their feelings and their freedom. Most Warforged have no interest in religion, but some embrace faith and mysticism, seeking higher purpose and deeper meaning. Most Warforged were created in the forges of House Cannith. During the last war, House Cannith had heavily regulated regimens of instruction for Warforged. At their core was the understanding that a Warforged was not entitled to choose for itself. It was created for one purpose, to be obedient to and fight for whomever bought it. This simple concept required months of instruction. Although fighting came naturally enough, Warforged had to be taught the use of weapons and tactics. They were instructed in how to recognize enemies, know allies, and improvise when left without commands. Most of this training took the form of elaborate war games in which Warforged fought one another with real weapons, while artificers and mage rights stood on hand to heal them. The victors received praise and saw the exultation on the faces of their human commanders, while the losers were berated. At this point, most Warforged felt their first emotions. For most, it was a single feeling: pride or shame, joy or jealousy. From then on, the Warforged fought to preserve or quell that feeling through combat. It was better to feel nothing than to be jealous of others or shameful, and to maintain joy or pride, a Warforged had to succeed constantly in battle. This simple view of the world served the creators and buyers of the Warforged well. Next came fear. Although sometimes it is magically induced, most Warforged first experienced fear not in the face of overwhelming odds or terrible carnage, but when they realized that death means an end to experience. For a Warforged, this is a traumatic revelation. Warforged learned about other emotions on the battlefield. Most gained a sense of camaraderie from sharing battlefield successes and failures, but few knew what real friendship was, and fewer still understood an emotion as complicated as love. Hate came somewhat more easily to Warforged. Warforged who know jealousy can most easily understand hate, but any Warforged who cares for his comrades and fears for his life can come to hate an enemy that threatens both. Warforged need little to survive. Not sleep, food, or even air to breathe. Warforged need only shelter from extremes of cold and heat, and to repair damage done to their bodies. With such minimal requirements, one might think a Warforged could travel to a temperate clime and then do nothing but simply exist, standing in place like a statue. Yet Warforged are thinking creatures, and as such they require activities to occupy their thoughts. When House Cannith first created Thinking Warforged, it experimented with sensory deprivation, often by simply burying Warforged alive. Such experiments showed that, although Warforged could maintain their sanity far longer than humans could, Warforged left with nothing to do eventually became insane. Warforged always seek something to do or to pursue some purpose. They look for a place in the world or to make their mark on it. Some Warforged are content to have a meager existence, working only for materials to repair themselves, and taking shelter only in the worst weather. But the vast majority pursue some profession or activity to give purpose to their constantly working minds. All Warforged have opinions about war, and their feelings about it help dictate their current actions. War and violence are closely linked in the Warforged mind. You can't have one without the other. A Warforged witnessing a tavern brawl or a scuffle in the street inevitably sees it as part of a larger conflict. He might attempt to discover which side he should fight for, or what tactical advantage he might gain by allowing what could be enemies to wear one another down. The inability to think of violence on a small scale or as an isolated incident often causes problems for Warforged in settlements of their creators and former masters. For this reason, many Warforged either seek peaceful lands or take up lives in which the purpose of violence is clearly defined. Warforged were sold to each of the 5 nations, and each individual owed allegiance to one of those states. Even so, a Warforged was beholden not to all the people of that nation, but to its army leaders. Free Warforged do not consider other creatures their masters, but instead tend to view them through the filter of their old lives, placing them in one or more of 5 categories: commander, comrade, ally, civilian, and foe. Warforged consider an individual to be their commander if they take orders from that person. Taught to recognize the marks of authority on the battlefield, Warforged also categorize others commanders and look for their place in the chain of command. Comrades are those who work or fight alongside the Warforged on a consistent basis. The term comrade is a label that a Warforged uses to indicate that experience. Warforged feel camaraderie for a group or individual after going through trying times, but it is only now among the humanoids in peaceful times that Warforged are beginning to understand the concept of true friendship. Allies are creatures with the same goals as the Warforged. Warforged always view allies with some suspicion. During the last war, alliances were frequently broken, and Warforged learned not to trust allies to remain true. A Warforged considers anyone with whom it does not have a quarrel or common goal a civilian. Civilians and non-combatants were to be ignored unless a Warforged was ordered to do otherwise. Thus, Warforged have difficulty relating to others now that they have no masters to tell them how to do so. And many people see Warforged as disrespectful, rude, and cold. A Warforged chooses its foes based on its goals. A foe need not be attacked, but a foe is someone to be defeated. When labeling someone a foe, a Warforged also looks to see who that person's allies are and what position the individual occupies in a chain of command. Of course, foes often became allies during the last war, and Warforged often attach less rancor to the words foe and enemy than do most creatures. Across the continent of Corvair, Warforged begin new lives in the aftermath of the last war. In an effort to find their place in what seems to them to be a new world, Warforged take up all kinds of professions and lifestyles. Some settle down in pastoral lands, taking up the simple lives of peasants and emulating their neighbors' dress and habits. Others accept that they cannot live as the other races do and drift from town to town, aimless wanderers in search of purpose. Especially selfless Warforged do what other races cannot, or what is dangerous for their former masters. They mine, they salvage sunken ships, they work 20 hours or more a day. It is important to note that although Warforged are tireless physically, they are still subject to mental fatigue, just as other races are. Too much time spent concentrating on the same mental task is exhausting to them, and this is one of the primary motivations behind their wish to change tasks every few hours, to keep their minds occupied. With no connections other than friendship, and with talents running toward combat, Warforged readily form bonds with daring and driven people. A large portion of the Warforged population serves in venturesome occupations, especially when compared to the number of adventurers that come from among other races. Individual Warforged choose different hobbies, but such activities tend to be either repetitious or unending. A Warforged might count objects nearby, particularly if there are many of them, such as blades of grass. Another Warforged might carry with her strips of leather that she braids into intricate patterns, and then unbraids so she can create new patterns. Many Warforged gravitate to the tasks given them when they were required to wait before a battle. These include sharpening weapons, cleaning accoutrements, and checking and rechecking equipment. Such tasks can hold endless fulfillment for a Warforged when they have nothing else to do. Few Warforged actively pursue leisure activities that require another creature's participation. During their lives among other races, they find that they have time on their hands when other races pause to eat or sleep. Thus left alone, most Warforged pursue solitary activities. Still, Warforged who are invited to partake in some leisure activity that involves other creatures take to it with the gusto typical of the race. Many Warforged greatly enjoy games of strategy, such as chess or gambling. For a race not inclined to displays of emotion, Warforged produce a surprising amount of art in a broad array of media. Before the end of the last war, the number of Warforged who participated in artistic endeavors could be counted on one hand. Now, many Warforged pursue some kind of artistic activity, although few Warforged would think of it as such. When Warforged create art, they most often do so by mistake. Even Warforged bards rarely create new music, instead repeating traditional marching songs and battle ballads. The desire for expression of emotion, ornamentation, or art to honor another does not often occur to them. Yet many Warforged create things without purpose, objects that exist for no reason other than their desire to create them. The objects are created when a Warforged has little else to do. The indentured Warforged of Thrain and Karnath are kept busy with constant toil, but adventuring Warforged and those who work according to the schedules of the other races around them often have nothing better to do than tinker with some hobby. Sometimes this hobby creates what other races would consider art. Most such Warforged art is portable, something a Warforged can easily carry and tinker with while others sleep or eat. Wood carving, sketching, and weaving are popular pastimes. Warforged art tends to be wholly abstract or completely representational. It rarely displays emotion or analysis of any kind. A Warforged rarely attaches any emotion to the object he creates. The art is merely something to occupy his hands and mind while he waits. Despite this, a small but fervent collector's market for Warforged art exists in Breland, and certain individuals in other nations have a fondness for it. During the last war, most Warforged were discouraged from taking any interest in magic or their own construction. The only practice of magic taught in the House Cannith training halls was that of the artificer, and House Cannith strictly controlled the training of the few Warforged selected for that duty. Thus, most Warforged think very little about magic and attach no emotion to it. Magic and how it interacts with a Warforged body holds no interest for most Warforged beyond pure practicality. A Warforged values magic that aids him, especially magic that repairs his body. Warforged enjoy the ability to accept magic into their composite plating and to graft particular magic items to their bodies, but few Warforged are curious about how or why either process works. Still, some Warforged, mainly those who have taken up spellcasting classes, are beginning to investigate their pasts and the rumored links between Warforged and the ancient magics of Zendrick. These few seekers of knowledge see the discovery of the means to create Warforged and docent components as a strategic goal. Many Warforged adopt the culture of the area they live in. A Warforged might even dress in the clothes common to the folk in the area and emulate the speech patterns and customs of his neighbors. Some Warforged take such efforts to great extremes, exploring their living nature by engaging in eating, and sleeping by remaining inactive during the night. Other Warforged deny their living nature and instead revel in their differences from humanoids. These Warforged never wear clothes or partake in the celebrations or rituals of the societies in which they live. They remain active constantly, taking pride in their tireless strength. Such Warforged often take up professions where their construct nature gives them a great advantage, such as mining and underwater salvaging. The Treaty of Thronehold gave Warforged their freedom, but only after great debate. House Cannith and Thrain argued ardently that Warforged were not living creatures, because they do not possess souls. Their evidence for this was that Warforged cannot become undead by any known method, not even ghosts or shadows. They are immune to energy drain, and no one knows of a Warforged soul in Dolur, the realm of the dead. Breland argued that because Warforged can be raised and resurrected, they must have souls. Of course, House Cannith and Thrain countered that no Warforged brought back from death told tales of any kind of afterlife. In the end, the question of souls, as that portion of the negotiations came to be known, was left unanswered. Warforged were freed because they could exhibit thought and free will. Today, many people continue to think of Warforged as creatures without souls, and citizens of Thrain often refer to Warforged as the Soulless. In the training halls of the Warforged, members of House Cannith kept talk of religion to a minimum. Warforged were informed of the capabilities of clerics and paladins and taught how to recognize them on the battlefield, but their trainers conspicuously avoided discussion about the nature of religion or the afterlife. Uncertain whether Warforged even possessed souls, the House Cannith trainers hammered home the concept that destruction meant oblivion, and that clerics and paladins were simply spellcasters like sorcerers and wizards. This approach allowed them to sell Warforged to customers regardless of religious affiliation. In the years since the last war, Warforged have learned of religion and gods. The vast majority of Warforged don't understand why someone would worship a deity. It seems to them like choosing to be beholden to a master who never gives commands. Many Warforged are offended by the concept of worship, and nearly all seem to think belief in deities is foolish. Despite their dismissal of gods, however, Warforged recognize the power of clerics and paladins. Many see the value of members of other races devoting themselves to ideals when it results in power. Although Warforged understand this concept, they see more benefit from the spellcasting of an artificer, and most who choose to gain magical power take that path. The rare Warforged who thinks religion has something to offer is likely a zealous convert and a member of the cleric or paladin class. Warforged were not brought up with religion, and a Warforged who takes a religious path has thought long and hard about the subject and made a deliberate choice to believe. Warforged who take up the banner of religion could worship nearly any deity or concept, but some general tendencies are seen throughout the small population. In the past, Warforged had names imposed upon them, usually having to do with military rank and position. Most Warforged end up with simple names related to their job or abilities. Some Warforged accept names or nicknames that their comrades give them, while others search for an ideal name that defines them. Many just take a name common to members of another race, especially those of humans. Few permanent Warforged settlements exist. Warforged require protection from great heat and cold due to their vulnerability to non-lethal damage. But in most instances, shade or a fire provides what is needed without a permanent structure. Similarly, since Warforged do not need food and do not procreate, interpersonal contact is unnecessary. Even so, as Warforged attempt to find their places in the world after the last war, they often remain in the squads, units, and battalions they were members of before. Larger groups of Warforged have taken up residence near some cities, having built their own boroughs after their units were officially disbanded. Immediately after the war, Warforged often lived outside settlements in large tent cities, built in the orderly and clean fashion the Warforged were accustomed to. Some of these tent cities still exist, but in other places Warforged have replaced them with more permanent structures, usually utilitarian single-room dwellings large enough for a few people and a fire. Such Warforged burrows have grown considerably smaller since the first few months after the war, and it seems likely that in a few years they'll disappear entirely. As Warforged find jobs, they're often offered shelter where they work, which has the benefit of providing their employers with guards at night. A small number of Warforged actively seek a return to the state of war. Some of these Warforged find their services prized by those who think the Treaty of Thronehold left some unsettled business. But most disaffected Warforged seek out the Lord of Blades in the Mournland, looking to join his rumored army. Stalking the Mournland like a spectral juggernaut, the Lord of Blades has emerged from the turmoil of the last war as a symbol that calls to all the Warforged of Corvair. Regardless of what they have become, the Warforged were created to fight and die on the orders of their creators. Some Warforged accept their history for what it is and look toward the future, but others hold a grudge because of how they were exploited by their creators. Those Warforged make up the followers of the Lord of Blades. The Lord of Blades preaches of an apocalyptic future in which the Warforged will destroy or enslave the nations of flesh and blood. "We were made as weapons," the Lord of Blades has declared over and over. "Let us be weapons. Let the nations of the land reap what they have sown." Today, Warforged roam the Mournland in service to the Lord of Blades, patrolling the devastated terrain and salvaging resources from the ashes of Sire. Most of these dissidents despise creatures of flesh, and any meeting with outsiders usually ends in blood being spilled. Other disciples of the Lord of Blades launch attacks on targets across Corvair, destroying Cannith workshops, killing nobles known for their abuse of Warforged, and seizing shipments of weapons or arcane research to further deplete their enemy. To the flesh and blood citizens of Corvair, the Lord of Blades is a figure of terror and pain. But the Warforged under his sway, and some objective observers of other races, believe that his rage is fueled by the injustice heaped upon the Warforged after their creation. The Warforged were treated as disposable soldiers, almost slaves, during the war, and the post-war arguments over what rights the Warforged should be granted, as if fundamental rights were meant to be bestowed or withheld by political authorities, gave the Warforged themselves no voice, as if they were still the property of their creators. The Lord of Blades' call to action is appealing to many Warforged because it is grounded in legitimate grievances, even if the proposed action is abhorrent. Compared to the total number of Warforged created and deployed in combat during the last war, the followers of the Lord of Blades are not especially numerous. His existence and message are well known in the countries bordering the Mournland, especially Breland, but less familiar in the rest of Corvair. Hoping to swell the ranks of his followers, the Lord of Blades has agents spreading his apocalyptic message in every city with significant Warforged populations. The Lord of Blades didn't appear in the world until after the Day of Mourning. Only he knows what his identity was before then, but many suppositions have been put forth. Some scholars say that he was originally a Warforged named Bulwark, the personal bodyguard of King Borinel of Breland. Others believe that he was the last Warforged to emerge from the creation forges at Eston, completed in the last moments before the morning. Perhaps the most outlandish idea is that the Lord of Blades is not a true Warforged at all. The first Warforged were created by an artificer named Aaron de Cannith, who became furious when the house used his invention to create weapons of war. Some believe Aaron transferred his consciousness into a Warforged body so that he could personally seek vengeance for the wrongs done to his children. This has been D&D Legends and Lore. Thanks so much for listening or watching on your platform of choice. If you enjoyed this episode, consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. Also consider leaving us a review, especially on Apple Podcasts. It really helps others find the show. If you'd like to support us more directly, check out our Patreon or channel memberships on YouTube. There you'll also find ad-free early episodes as well as live play and third-party D&D content. Links, as always, are in the description. With that, thank you for listening, and happy adventuring.